Welcome to the virtual service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Lake Norman. Our fellowship walks diverse paths to find meaning and purpose, but are united in our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all and the obligation to express our faith through acts of justice and compassion. All are welcome, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, ability, or economic status. I'm Lynn Henderson, and I've been a member since the fellowship's founding in 2009 and currently serve on the congregation's board. Our speaker today, Reverend Bob Hughs, along with his wife Judy Hughs, founded a group in 2014 called Now Choices. Now stands for Nightingale Optimal Wellness Choices, and Nightingale refers to Florence Nightingale. Today our world needs healing and to be rekindled with love, and we may find lessons there from Florence Nightingale. She once lit her beacon of lamplight to comfort the wounded, and that light has blazed a path across a century and still shines through the countless nurses and healers who have followed in her footsteps. I've chosen our chalice lighting words from the Now website. We light this chalice to celebrate the flame of Florence Nightingale's legacy. Let that same light be rekindled to burn brightly in our hearts. Let us take our own lanterns of caring, each in our own ways, to more brightly walk our own paths of service in the world, to more clearly share our own noble purpose with each other. Reverend Bob Hughs is a retired clergyman, social worker, and instructor of world religions. Nightingale Optimal Wellness Choices emphasizes the health and well-being of the whole person, body, mind, spirit, and relationships. Today, Reverend Bob will share a message focusing on an important figure in the history of Unitarianism, Ralph Waldo Emerson, titled Emerson, God, and Church. We'll have a special opportunity to discuss today's message in a Zoom coffee hour after the service. You'll get more details after we hear from Reverend Bob Hughs.
Greetings. My name is Bob Hughs, and I'm pleased and privileged and proud to be the guest speaker for the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Lake Norman this Sunday, June 28, 2020. Welcome to each of you. Now it's clear to all of us that times are different. In addition to the usual challenges of life, we're dealing with the pandemic, and we're being confronted with other realities as well. At first, it was just the economic downturn as a consequence of the pandemic. And then came the death of George Floyd, which in many ways has become a symbol, a metaphor of a vast injustice in our society. The ensuing protest have brought those injustices to our awareness again, perhaps more than we would like. And the question arises what to do, what's next. Sometime before the pandemic started, I decided to talk with you today regarding Ralph Waldo Emerson, one of the heroes of our Unitarian Universalist tradition. I've been tempted to change that topic. It may seem quite irrelevant now. And then I began to wonder if a look at Emerson might be helpful. So I'll stick to topic and think with you regarding Ralph Waldo Emerson. Now, it may be obvious that I've never shared a sermon via the internet before. Worship via virtual format is something new. Not just having one thing be new, I'd like to share my thoughts in a different way as well and ask for your forbearance. During the last few years, the field of neuroscience has been of intriguing interest to me, especially what science is helping us understand regarding such things as meditation and mindfulness, stress reduction, contemplation, centering prayer. The field of study along with that is known as neuroscience. And I'm quick to say that I rely on others for the information. I rely on those who've done the brain imaging studies and MRIs and looking at how the human brain functions during meditation or prayer, and how the human brain adapts to change and sort of rewires itself during life. There seems to be no doubt that the brain function and the structure of people who meditate regularly is different from the brains of people who do not. And while I don't understand the science behind that, it does make sense to me. And it does help me appreciate the importance of mindfulness. I encourage each of you to do some of your own research into this exciting field, a place where science and faith interface. I recently came across an article that seemed particularly apropos for today. The article shared the Bell model, B-E-L-L, something Mark Wallman and folks at Loyola University have set forth. Bell stands for Brain-Based Experiential Learning and Living, and according to the authors, provides a better way to learn. The developers realize that most of us know nothing of the process of creative thinking. So I'm going to be drawing on some of the Bell model this morning. A part of this study emphasizes that we need to find ways to give our brain what it wants. What it wants is satisfying curiosity and the experience of learning, not just absorbing a series of facts. Based on that awareness, the approach to start is with a grounded and centered space, and then for the teacher or preacher to share information for 5 or 10 minutes and then to pause. A sound is given to remind the opportunity for everyone to then let their minds wander, to daydream for 60 seconds. And after that, everyone asks themselves, what did I find most interesting or valuable? And then they write down anything that inspired them. Now, the understanding is that this is one way to access our own inner wisdom, our own intuition. And as we look at Emerson, maybe that will make more sense. And then there's another short period of input or lecture or speech or sermon, and then another time of mental wandering. And how often do you get permission to let your mind go wandering? And then near the end of the lecture or speech or sermon, when again relaxed, everyone asks themselves, what did I find most interesting, inspiring, and useful? So that's a real quick overview of the Bell model. I'd like to experiment with using that process this morning. It's new to me as well as you. I'll talk us through it as we go. The brief inputs will be on Emerson. The thoughts and awarenesses will be your own. While you don't have to write anything down, I do invite you to have some paper and a writing instrument available so that you could do that if you decide to. And again, this is new for me as well as you, but let's give it a go. We'll start with our feet on the floor and taking some deep breaths. Let yourself be aware of your breathing. You don't need to change anything, just be aware. Be aware of what moves or doesn't move as you breathe. Does your abdomen rise as you inhale, for example? Some people close their eyes, others keep their eyes open with a soft focus. Either way is okay. Sometimes it's helpful to count your breaths. You could count each exhale up to 10 and then start again. If you lose your place in the count, just start with 1 again. Just notice. Maintaining this sense of awareness, let your attention turn to this time and this space. I'm going to share some thoughts about Ralph Waldo Emerson. Then we'll have another opportunity to turn inward. Emerson was born in Boston on May 25th, 1803. He died in nearby Concord in 1882 at the age of 78. He is seen as part of the Romantic movement, which had started in Europe with such people as Lord Byron, William Blake, Mary Shelley, William Wordsworth. The movement is usually dated late 1700s till the mid-1800s. In the United States, the movement was known as the Transcendentalist movement, and Emerson would play a key role. Some of the other key figures in the Transcendentalist movement in the U.S. were, well, Henry David Thoreau, Herman Melville, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Margaret Fuller, names known to most of us through history or American literature classes. Ralph Waldo Emerson graduated in the middle of his class at Harvard in 1821 at the age of 18. He was not known as a particularly good student. He taught school for a short time and then moved south, and I found this interesting. He first moved to Charleston and then to St. Augustine, Florida. It was in St. Augustine that Emerson first encountered slavery. At one point, he attended a meeting of the Bible Society while a slave auction was taking place in the yard outside. He wrote, "One ear therefore heard the glad tidings of great joy, while the other heard, 'Going, gentlemen, going.'" The Emersons were a religious family. There were 7 generations of preachers in Ralph's ancestry. It was a brother and Reverend William Ellery Channing, another Unitarian minister at the time, who influenced Ralph Waldo toward the ministry. He was accepted into Harvard Divinity School in 1824. Emerson married Ellen Tucker in 1829. She was just 18. In less than 2 years, Ellen died of tuberculosis. 2 of Emerson's brothers who also died of tuberculosis, as did other close family. Ellen's death profoundly affected Ralph. He frequently visited her grave, for example. And I've wondered if there's some parallels between tuberculosis at that time and the coronavirus in ours. In the same year that they were married, 1829, the Second Church of Boston called Ralph Waldo Emerson to be the junior pastor. He was ordained as a Unitarian minister. In addition to being a minister at Second Church, Emerson served as a chaplain to the Massachusetts legislature and was a member of the Boston School Committee. After Ellen's death in 1831, Emerson began to have doubts about church ministry. In his journal, in June 1832, he wrote, "I've sometimes thought that in order to be a good minister, it was necessary to leave the ministry. The profession is antiquated. In an altered age, we worship in the dead forms of our forefathers." Reverend Emerson also began seeing Holy Communion in a different way. His perspective changed so that he came to believe that Jesus' words about his body and blood being food and drink applied only to the original disciples who were present at the Passover meal just prior to Jesus' arrest and execution. Seeking to be true to his own faith, Emerson stopped administering the sacrament of the Lord's Supper at Second Church. As you might imagine, this brought him into disfavor with some of the congregants. And late in 1832, Emerson resigned as minister. While this was a loss of income, it also offered Emerson opportunity. He was going to now have the opportunity to spread his beliefs and teachings beyond the confines of the church and eventually beyond the confines of Boston. It is at this point that I want to pause and provide you an opportunity for your mind to wander. How many times do you get permission for that? This time without the distraction of my words. I'll make a sound with the triangle, then there'll be silence for 1 minute. This is the occasion when the Bell model says there's a chance for relaxing and daydreaming, mind wandering. There's no assignment as to what you're to think about. Just let your minds wander, and after 63 seconds, I'll make the sound again. The Bell model now suggests that you ask yourself, what did I find most interesting? What got my attention in these thoughts about Emerson? Where did my mind go as it wandered? This is an opportunity to write down a couple of things. So take 30 seconds or so to do that. Or let your mind wander some more. Then we will return to our subject, turning our attention to Emerson's Divinity School Address. So, 30 more seconds to jot down some reminders. We left Emerson in 1832. He was now outside of official Unitarian ministry. He turned to writing and lecturing, but first a trip to Europe. He left on Christmas Day, 1832. His travels took him to key cities in Italy, France, Switzerland, England. He met with some key figures of the time: John Stuart Mill, William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and Thomas Carlyle. He returned to the U.S. in October 1833. The Lyceum movement was gaining traction at that time. Emerson gave his first lecture in November of that year. That lecture on nature and natural history would be the first of 1,500 lectures in his career. Emerson moved to Concord, Massachusetts, and remarried. He and Queenie had 4 children. Emerson supported the family through an inheritance and through his writing and speaking. Some people consider Emerson the first man of letters in the United States. He was the first to make a living with writing and lecturing. Remember, Thoreau was a surveyor and picked up odd jobs. Hawthorne was an inspector of revenue for Salem. It was Emerson who supported himself and his family through lecturing and writing. I want to briefly focus on one of those 1,500 lectures. On the 15th of July, 1838, Emerson gave the commencement address to the graduates of Harvard Divinity School. This would become known as the Divinity School Address and became a pivotal point in the development of the Unitarian movement. The address was controversial even in that time. It would be 30 years before he was invited back to speak to the Divinity School. In the Divinity School Address, Emerson reflected on the state of the church at the time. He felt that Christianity had gone astray in 2 major ways. First, the church had established itself between people and God. Emerson felt that one cannot receive religion, intuition at second hand. Here's a quote: "It is only by coming again to themselves, or to God in themselves, that people can grow forevermore. It is a low benefit to give me something. It is a high benefit to enable me to do something of myself." And another: "In how many churches, by how many prophets, tell me, is man made sensible that he's an infinite soul, that the earth and heavens are passing into his mind, that he's drinking forever the soul of God?" Emerson was saying that the church had, for the most part, failed its mission. He would go on to admonish the Divinity School graduates as to how to rectify that distortion. The second error of the church, the failure to remind people that we are infinite souls, was to be remedied by a return to a direct experience of God. Here's a quote: "The Spirit only can teach. Not any profane man, not any sensual, not any liar, not any slave can teach, but only he can give who has. He only can create who is. The man on whom the soul descends, through whom the soul speaks, alone can teach. Continuing the quote. Courage, piety, love, wisdom can teach. And every person can open the door to these angels. They shall bring one the gift of tongues. But the man who aims to speak as books enable, as scented use, as the fashion guides, and as interest commands, that man babbles. Let him hush. That's the end of the quote. As I reread Emerson, I'm again reminded he wrote and spoke in the manner of his day, and hence the usage of a term such as man. If he were writing today, he would say person. Emerson has shared his diagnosis, and now he will share his recommendation for a cure. And now, my brothers, remember that the Divinity School graduates would be all men in those days. Now, my brothers, you will ask, what in these desponding days can be done by us? The remedy is already declared in the ground of our complaint of the church. The failure of our religion to evolve, the assumption that the age of inspiration is past, that the Bible is closed, the fear of degrading the character of Jesus by representing him as a man, indicate with sufficient clearness the falsehood of our theology. It is the office of a true teacher to show us that God is, not was, that he speaketh, not spake, that true Christianity, a faith like Christ in the infinitude of man, is lost. In thoughts which would be picked up later in lectures and essays such as the emphasis on self-reliance, Emerson is emphasizing that every person has access to God. It is the calling of each person to open to God's presence. Here's a paraphrase of a longer quote, which includes some advice to these young clergy regarding visiting members of the parish. You young clergy are newborn bards of the Holy Ghost. Cast aside all conformity and acquaint your parishioners with first-hand experiences with God. Don't worry about current theological fashions, customs, pleasures, money, or authority. Such things will blind you. As you make your visits, be to your parishioners one who experiences God. Be to them thought and virtue. Let their timid aspirations find in you a friend. Let their trampled instincts be genially tempted out in your atmosphere. Let their doubts know that you have doubted, and their wonder feel that you have wondered. By trusting your own heart, you shall gain more confidence in other people. For all our pettiness and easy answers, remember that all people have divine thoughts, that all people value the few real hours of life, that they love to be heard, they love to be caught up in a larger vision. We delight in the souls who make our souls wiser, who speak what we thought, who tell us what we knew, who give us permission to be what we truly are. That's the end of the paraphrase. Emerson picks up these themes in later works, such as the essay entitled Oversoul, a portion of which is in our hymnal, something we could consider another time. The Divinity School Address came to be seen as one of three prophetic voices of Unitarianism, voices which still help define who we are. It is easy to get lost in the eloquent speech of 1838. What I take away from this address is the emphasis on direct experience of God, what some would call the indwelling Christ. That is the person who is fully alive. It is through our true self, purified by Spirit, that we can access our inner wisdom. And that gets us back to our starting place, the Bell model. The Bell model is one way to help us access our inner wisdom, our true self. And here's a connection between Emerson and our current economic, political, and racial inequality situation. It is when we are operating from our inner wisdom, what Merton would call our true self, that we gain some grounded insight into what we need to be about. We'll now have another opportunity to pause and let our minds wander. I'll sound the triangle again, providing opportunity for your own reflection, your own daydreaming. You'll have 60 seconds. Then I'll sound the bell again. You'll have a few seconds to write down any thoughts which have been sparked. Remember, you're asking yourself, what did I find most interesting, inspiring, and useful? And what you write down may be even more important than what I've been sharing. I appreciated the opportunity to share some thoughts regarding Ralph Waldo Emerson, someone from our history who I appreciate a great deal, and to share something of the Bell model from contemporary neuroscience. If you're hearing this on Sunday morning of 28 June, after some closing words, there'll be opportunity to join a Zoom meeting for further conversation and mutual sharing. I would enjoy participating in such an event with you. If you're hearing this as a recording after Sunday, June 28th, the Zoom room is closed, obviously. If you'd like to do some more sharing, you're welcome to contact me. My email address is rthughs@nowchoices-nh.com, or you can contact the UU Fellowship of Lake Norman, and they can let me know of your interest. Best wishes to us all.
Thank you, Reverend Bob. We appreciate you sharing your insights and your wisdom this morning with us. And we also always appreciate the music of Micah Lickey.
Greetings, everybody. Hope you're doing well. This is a George Harrison song called Give Me Love. Give me love, give me peace on earth, give me life, keep me free from birth, give me hope, help me cope with this heavy load, trying to touch and reach you with heart and soul. My Lord, please take hold of my hand, that I might understand you. Won't you please, oh won't you give me love, give me love, give me peace on earth, give me life, keep me free from birth, give me hope, help me cope with this heavy load, trying to touch and reach you with heart and soul. Give me love, give me love, give me peace on earth, keep me life, keep me free from birth. so I might understand you. Won't you please, oh, won't you give me love? Take care, all.
Thank you, Mike. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. If you're visiting with us today, welcome. We are glad you found us. If you would like more information about our congregation or to stay connected, please contact our membership chair, Linda, whose email is at the bottom of the screen. Members, please continue to send your pledges and contributions to our mailing address found in the newsletter and on your screen. If you're watching on Sunday, June 28th before noon, you're invited to join a Zoom coffee and discussion time, focusing on the message we heard today from Reverend Bob. The Zoom link will appear on your screen. Today is our last service until August. We traditionally take a summer break, but watch your email for fellowship and social action opportunities and ways to stay connected over the next couple of months. Since this is our last time together for a while, I'd like to extinguish the chalice with traditional words from the Wiccan tradition used when a group parts with great hopes for the future. May the circle be open but unbroken. May peace, love, and kindness dwell in our hearts. Merry we meet and merry part, till merry we meet again. Blessed be.
As we move forward with the rest of the day and the week, may our actions, our will, be guided by that which is good. May our thoughts, our thinking, be guided by that which is true. And may our relationships with one another and with ourselves, our heart, be guided and kindled and inspired by that which is beautiful. Blessings to us all.